Greetings and welcome, fellow citizens. Today on Let's Talk Ship we are going to be looking at salvaging, from the different types of ships that you can be using, first person salvaging, the types of hazards that will be available, and also the 4 different stages of salvaging. So all that coming up on this week's Let's Talk Ship. Greetings and welcome, fellow citizens. Okay, so what exactly is salvaging? Salvaging is the act of taking someone else's ship that they have abandoned or is destroyed or no longer wanted, and stripping it of all of its components, all of its metals, and grinding down to the base elements, which you can then sell off for later profit. Now, in this video, we are going to be looking at all the different things in relating to salvaging. We're going to be looking at the 4 stages of salvaging. We're going to be looking at everything, the types of levels from first person salvaging, starter ship salvaging, and also the reclaimer salvaging, as well as the hazards that are involved with salvaging. So let's start off with the 4 levels of salvaging, and these are salvaging, and salvaging. Yeah, making names for things wasn't really one of my forte. Okay, so let's start with the first salvaging, which we should name as components. Level 2 salvaging as stripping, level 3 as scrapping, and level 4 selling. Okay, so you've either had like a massive war and you've got a whole load of enemy ships that you fight for. Right, okay, I've killed all the bad guys, now let's see if we can salvage, or see what we can salvage. Or you've come across a nice derelict which is ripe for the picking, or some like sort of crash site, and you just want to go in and try and rip it to pieces. Where do we start? Whereabouts are we going to start, and how are we going to go about doing it? Now, the first thing you need to do is components inside the ship. Now, even though that it's destroyed, there will still be some components that will be intact, undamaged, and quite valuable. I mean, things like, you can go for things like guns, the main weapons on the ships. You can go for the engines, you can go for the quantum drive, you can go for the gravity generator, you can go for, well, okay, maybe not the gravity generator, you can go for the cooling systems. But all the components that you can fit to your ship, you should be able to remove and put back in with new components. So if any of them fail, you can take them out and put them back in, as that will be the engineer's job. But you, as a salvager, when you find a derelict ship, you will find that there will still be some components in the ship that are good to go. So when you remove them, take them out, store them in your ship, they can turn a nice little profit. I mean, what does like a size 3 cooling system go for? Or an attrition size 5 cannon, if you can rip that off another player's ship. I mean, they can go for up to nearly like 100k on some of these pieces of equipment. So just from that level alone, if you're doing salvaging big ships, you can be making bank just by stripping out some of the components. Now, a lot of the components in these ships will be damaged or destroyed, so therefore you will probably get some consolation textbook items such like circuit boards or damaged circuit boards or damaged computers, which will will only come to like a couple of hundreds or maybe even a thousand credits, but at least it will still be something that you can just throw into your ship and then sell them all off in bulk later, or if you want to make space for something that's a little bit more profitable, get rid of them. So first up, salvage components. You found your ship of choice and you've stripped all of the components. And next thing you want to do is stripping. Yes, I know we all do like a good bit of stripping, but depending on which ship that you're using, because you've got from the first person shooter, I call it first person shooter, the first person level will have like a multi-tool attachment with a backpack that will allow you to strip the metal off the hull. So make sure you depressurize the ship first. Make sure the ship is depressurized before you do it. The reason being is I will come back to this later when we go into our hazards section, because I think that if you start stripping a ship whilst it's pressurized, it could cause some problems. So next step, depressurize and start stripping the ship. So as I said, if you was in first person view, you'll have a tool and then you'll be able to suck up all the metals into your backpack. Or if you have got something like a vulture or reclaimer and using drones, you'll be able to use drones or other tools to be able to strip the metal off the ship and store them into another location. Now, stripping is two sides of the same coin to when it comes to repair. So when it repair and salvaging, in this aspect, are two sides of the same coin, because that metal that can be thrown into reverse and you can use to repair other ships. So you're in first person mode, you like pulled off all the metal from one ship and then you've gone to another ship and then you can like paint it onto another ship, but it won't be full proper repair. It will just be like a patch up, just to make it look a little bit nicer, just to make it fly so you don't wobble around yeah, so you don't wobble around in your ship. But okay, so you've stripped off all the metal. You've stripped off all the metal using whatever tools that you've got at your disposal. And we're now onto the third stage, which will be scrapping. Now, after you've stripped off all the metal from the ship, there will still be things like the superstructure that's left over, such as like the metal frames or some of the internal components that just can't be removed. You will have like the superstructure that's left after stripping, and that superstructure will only be grind downable if you've got, say, like a cutting tool, which will probably allow you to snip off small little things in first person. But if you've got a reclaimer with a giant metal claw in the front and a great big massive grinding machine in the centre, and it will allow you to basically eat that ship up, that's what you're going to do. It will eat the ship up and then throw out scrap metal. Now, I must point out at this point that from this point here, from part 3 onwards, this is kind of speculation, because we already know about components, we already know about how stripping is working, because we've seen them talk about that in their Citizen Live, but we don't know how things like the reclaimer is going to work and how we're going to be doing the scrapping process. And this is how I certainly believe that the scrapping process is going to happen. And that is, like I said, the framework or the superstructure will be left, which you will need to use the reclaimer's arm, claw and scrapping mechanisms or grinding mechanisms to chew all of that up and turn it into scrap metal.
The Vulture is a single-person ship, so it's designed for the solo player. Players that want to get into the salvage career, that's what it's it's built around, that is its sole purpose.
The inspiration for the ship was from the Dragonfly. You have two arms on Drake Dragonfly, you see them as well on the Vulture. However, this time they have a different purpose, which is dragging in salvage, processing it.
Got a little bit of cargo space to store all the processed salvage or other cargo if you wish. It's designed to sort of sneak in, do a bit of salvage work, process that and move on to the next place, rather than something like the Reclaimer, which is just a huge target. But obviously the size of it is, you can't take this little ship up to an Idris and expect to just chomp it like something like the Reclaimer could do. So to give you a quick overview of how the salvage process will work, hopefully. You'll be flying along in your Vulture, you've got great visibility, there's very minimal cockpit struts or screens getting in your way when you're flying around. You'll scan for things you want to salvage, just like you'll be scanning for mining. You come alongside, you've got to then decide whether you want to do like a complete salvage, that is taking all the weapons and ordnance off. So if that's the case, EVA out, carry those items back off the ship, put them in your cargo hold for safekeeping and selling later, get back in your ship. Then it's a process of scraping the hull with the scraper beams to sort of strip the surface off. That all gets processed into commodity. Then it's salvage charges to break apart the hull more.
So essentially the ship cuts up the panels of the wrecks, it drags them in while processing, and then it goes into the second processing stage inside of the ship, where it all gets packed into cubes, just like combine harvesters. At the end you get a cube of salvage rather than a cube of hay.
Depending on the size of what you want to salvage, it can be quite a time-consuming process. If you're there in the Vulture trying to take apart a Starfarer, it's going to take a long time, but you'll probably do it eventually. But it would be better if you had a Reclaimer or some friends in Vultures to help you do that. Smaller ships like Gladius is probably not worth a Reclaimer's time to go and munch that up, but a Vulture is something that will get a lot of return out.
So that will be something that will then be stored in its hangar, and therefore you can use at a later point in time to sell on to, say, HUR5 admin office to sell off all your scrap metal stored in there. Which brings us nicely on to part 5, which is, or part 4 should I say, yeah, got my numbers mixed up, part 4, which is selling. And of course, as I said, you'll be out at the moment in game. You can't sell components or anything that you pick up, but once the cargo refactor comes into place, they are going to make it so that anything you find out in the verse, such as like little pistols, weapons, helmets, suits of armor, all the stuff you pick up from those bunker missions, you will then be able to sell on to the shops and such. Same thing that will go with the components you will find in these derelicts. You would also be able to sell off these components that you find. Although you won't be able to sell them up at the same high price that they are in the shops, because like I said, I'm sure that I can see something like a nice shield generator or good decent size 5 power gun going for about 100k, but you'll probably get like half that price. So it's like 50k for like a nice big attrition 5, which is still a decent amount of money, especially adding on to everything else you get. Because another thing that you will get from salvaging is cargo. Because don't forget, when you find a destroyed ship, it might also have been transporting cargo. So therefore, you'll be able to bring all of that onto your ship, and then be able to sell it at admin offices or other places of interest. Okay, so now let's talk about the different types of levels you'll get. You'll start off from like first person perspective, so FPS, there'll be FPS salvaging. The entry level ship will be the Vulture, which will allow you to be able to do a little bit of stripping and maybe a little bit of grinding. We still don't really know exactly what level it is that the ship, what level that this ship will actually do. but it is actually a big ship. I mean, I've looked at some of these pictures up here and I can see how tiny that man is in represents so the actual cabin that he works in. So yeah, I think that that ship is going to be a little bit bigger than your average starter ship, but is more or less like, say, like a reclaimer, or maybe just a little bit smaller than maybe a mole. Okay, so let's kick off with the different levels of salvaging that you will get. At the beginning, we'll start with FPS salvaging. You've got FPS mining already, so why not a little bit of FPS salvaging? Now with FPS salvaging, you will get a multi-tool attachment that will allow you to not only strip but also paint materials from a machine, from a ship. And also with this attachment, it will also double as a backpack as well. So it won't be that you can use this and a backpack. You will have to have this solely as a backpack sorry, cut that, start again. You will have this solely as a backpack attachment, which will then lead on to your multi-tool. Now with this attachment, it will allow you to pull metals off of any ships as well as painting it on. So that's why I was saying that it is salvaging and repair are two sides of the same coin. So when you pull the mine, or when you strip the metals off of a ship, that metal will be stored into your backpack for future use. So when you put it into reverse, you can basically paint it back over the ship that you're trying to repair. So when it comes down to people going out there on repair jobs, say, hey, my ship's all damaged up, I need some repair. So it is possible for people to go out there under the pretext that they're going to repair it and end up stripping them off their entire hull. And then ask them to say, hey, that much you sent earlier, it wasn't good enough. Pay us a little bit more and we'll put it back on. Fine, thanks, boom, there you go. And yep, I am definitely sure that's going to happen. So that is first person FPS salvage. You will be able to wander around or float around in space and just use a gun to strip metals off a ship and also paint it back on again. I'm not sure if paint's the right word, but paint's the word that I'm going with for the moment. Okay, next level up, or should I say entry level ship, is the Vulture. Now the Vulture is deceptively big. It is much bigger than a starter ship, such as like an Aurora. Much bigger, maybe even a little bit bigger than a Prospector. I'm not too sure because the concept art picture that I've seen of it shows a tiny little man on top of a cabin with a very long ass ladder that it needs to get up just to get into the main cabin. So I'm thinking that the Vulture is actually much bigger than what most people are going to think. And when people see it for the first time, they'll say, wow, I didn't expect it to be that big. I think it might be around about the same size as a mole. Give or take. But this is all right guesswork here. However, what the Vulture will be able to do, it should be able to do the stripping as well and then store all the metals in the back for later use, as well as I might do a little bit of grinding. Now, as I said, my idea of grinding could be different. It could also change so that when it strips, doesn't strip the metal off the front, it will strip the entire thing completely. But we'll have to see how it goes. It's all still in flux at the moment. From what I was told earlier from Star Citizen Live, is that all of these tools and this stripping will do is just peel off the metals from the top of the ship, leaving the superstructure underneath. But that then leaves it up to be grinded up later by other means. And I think the Vulture will mainly be just focused in on just stripping out. But I have seen some slight concept ships of showing it cutting up the programs with two front lasers, courtesy of Star Jump. But yeah. Outside of this, we have drones. Drones can also be used as salvage drones or repair drones, depending how they're programmed. Because you may have heard the Vulcan ship will have salvage and repair drones inside it as well. So when you send those drones out, those drones will then be able to either strip the metals, store it, come back to base, dump their loads into your cargo bay before being sent back out, or you might have to unload it by hand by the look of it. Because the images I've seen on the Vulcan is that they've got like the drones are in some sort of glass capsule that gets launched from the ship. When they come back, they'll then be brought inside the ship. So therefore, you might need a person to actually unload the metals from the drones before sending them back out, which I think will be cool. And as I said, these drones can also either salvage or repair, depending on which direction you've got them set to. So that will be a good thing that's going for that. And then the top of the line, the end game ship, the Reclaimer. Now the Reclaimer is going to be the big badass bad daddy of salvaging. It will do everything. It's got a drone bay, it's got a large metal claw that will reach out and grab ships. We're sure that we're going to weaponize that claw at one point. It is going to be done. That claw is going to be used to capture an attacking pirate and crash it to death, and then just eat it in, bring it in. The Reclaimer is one of the biggest ships currently in game at the moment, and will eat your ship for breakfast. As I said, it's got drones in there that we'll use to do the stripping and repairing if needed. It has got a grinding station, so an engineer will have to be at the grinding station to allow all the metals or the ships to actually fall into there and grind up into little small pastes and mushes, just to turn them into scrap metal to be stored into processing and storage. So once the grind metal comes out, once the grinding has done its business, it will then poop it out of the bottom. Yes, I did say poop. It will poop it out of the bottom and into scrap metal processing, where people will need to come in and sort them out into nice manageable containers and then push them down at the chute at the back into scrap metal storage, which will then be perfect for which will be perfect so that when you go off to start selling, you can start selling it at all major scrap metal dealers or merchants, whoever wants to buy them and take it off your hands. Okay, next up, hazards. Yes, there will be hazards when it comes to scrap metal processing or scrapping or salvaging. Get the names right. I don't suppose any of you guys have played the game Shipbreaker at all. Now, Shipbreaker came out like sometime last year, and it was maybe a little bit soon. It came out not too long ago, and it was a pretty decent game. And whilst I was playing Shipbreaker, I was thinking, this is what Star Citizen is going to need to take note of if they want to make salvaging an actual real thing. And over the time, it looks like it is really quite on par to be pretty much most of what Shipbreaker is. Now, when it comes to hazards, there are several hazards that we need to look out for. Firstly, depressurization. Secondly, explosions. And thirdly, fire. Now, depressurization is a mechanic that's currently being worked on right now. It's not in game at the moment, but it is something that wants to be in game. Well, pretty much most of these are currently worked on at the moment. But yeah, there will be a point when the cabins will be pressurized, and if you open up an airlock without depressurizing first, it will shoot everything out into space. Now imagine that on a massive ship, and you just crack open the hole and you cause depressurization breach, or whatever you're going to call it. It is going to throw boxes, it's going to throw bits of metal at you, and it's going to send you shooting out into space or into another corner of metal. It is going to be hazardous and very, very dangerous. So you are going to want to make sure that you depressurize anything inside the ship first before trying to strip it off of anything that's that could cause a potential breach. Secondly, explosions. You will find that there are certain items in there that will react or have been set as a trap. I mean, you could have it so that there'll be containers, explodable containers, that if they are shot or they got damaged or they get electricity passes near them, they will explode, and then they can cause the third most the third hazard, which is fire. Fire is another thing, another mechanic that is currently being worked on, and I have seen a lot of stuff in relation to the fire and how fire is spreading and how it's going to affect inside an oxygen rich environment. Now, all that these ships are, they are giant metal cans full of flammable gas like oxygen. So another reason to depressurize them is to avoid fires, because if the fires start and they start spreading, it's going to destroy a lot of your wonderful stuff that you're going to try and salvage, such as maybe, well, yourself. but yeah, you're not really trying to salvage yourself, you're trying to salvage a ship, and you don't really want a ship in flames because that's not going to be as valuable as a ship not in flames. So yeah, don't let it start fires, because they will be bad. Fire bad, remember that. And there are two more hazards when it comes to salvaging, and these are enemies, both PvE as well as other players. So I don't know if they're going to be putting this in, but if there's some nice Rex crew around, you might have NPC players or pirates that want to try and take it off your hands for you, just to add that little bit of extra excitement. So make sure you bring along some fighter escorts or people that can defend your back. But also, if it ever is announced that you found a piece of scrap that you are trying to salvage for lots and lots of money, other players will also want to take that from you as well. And yeah, so prepare to do a lot of PvP combat if it's ever discovered you found a nice juicy hole. And that's but that's also another thing that I will get into a little bit later, PvP combat around salvaging. Well, that kind of brings us around to the last thing that I want to talk about, and that is the types of salvaging that you would get out there. So you would have salvaging from destroyed enemies, such as PvE ships, NPC ships, or other player ships. You'll have derelicts, which you'll find drifting around in space, which could be location specific, or there could be missions that you need to go to, such as you might get a mission to go to a particular derelict to discover a person's body, and once you've discovered that, you've got a nice juicy ship plus loads of debris flying all over the place that you can try and see if you can salvage and recover. Now, for these mission locations, I don't know how well it's going to go for salvaging, because these are a little bit like landmarks at the moment. There are quite a few derelict locations in game at the moment. I know that we've been stood on the bridge of an 890, not an 890 jump, we stood on the bridge of a Javelin, or was it an Idris before, that was basically half buried in the planet. That's out there. But if we were to come to it now, and with salvage all intel, would you be able to pick it up and scrap it? I don't know. So there might be some derelicts that you can't scrap, because some of the ones in the game at the moment are like caterpillars, but they are working on a reclaimer derelict, which should be in game soon, within like the next patch or two. but I'm not too sure that they will be scrappable, considering they've been aged to rust over hundreds of years, and it's probably nothing left worth of value to scrap, so it will be just there as a landmark. However, fresh kills, such as like the mission you'll get, such as we found a ship that's drifting out in space that's just been boarded by pirates and the people are dead, and we need you to go and investigate to see if such and such person is still there. Or NPC enemies, or here's the big one, other players. Now I really do think that when we're going to get a lot of players onto a server, we can have things like giant corporate battles, one corp versus the other, where you've got like javelins, Idrises, and a whole host of fleets of ships on one side and then the other, and they just battle it out. And in the end, once one side is totally defeated and is running with their tail between their legs or have just been all killed off, the victor will stand over a gold field of destroyed salvageable ships. So with their reclaimers in tow, they will come in and set up a massive a massive operation of cleaning up and eating up all of the destroyed ships, from the fighters to the capital ships, and turning all of their once proud fleet into salvageable scrap for selling. And yeah, I think that is one of the ways that salvaging is going to go into the future. And expect me piloting my reclaimer, the Nebuchadnezzar, or whatever I'm going to call it. So expect me flying up right behind you, ready to salvage, ready to get stuck right in there. So that has been all for Let's Talk Ship. I hope you guys have enjoyed watching this as much as I've done in creating this. I am doing a whole series on ships as well as the upgrade path. So please don't forget to like and subscribe. I do plenty of content here. Well, I try to, but yeah. So thanks very much for watching. Don't forget to like and subscribe, and I will see you guys out there.